Hey, and welcome back to episode 14 of United We Stand, Divided We podcast. I am Robert from the US, and with us we have.
Lionel from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, where it has been sticky and feeling hot, but not summer hot yet.
We got a little of that stickiness here too. Humidity's been kind of on the rise, but that's typical Middle Tennessee weather, especially when
Well,
it's
yeah,
been
yeah, you're
stormy.
much further south and much closer to the Gulf of Mexico than we are.
Very
Yeah, I
true.
will say this: the weather pattern that we're feeling right now passed right by you first. Like it's
Yes.
literally the same weather system. So you guys
Yeah.
got lucky; it skirted past you. Apparently, it would probably would have been a lot worse if it had been down there instead of up here, because we know what that's like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anywho,
So far, no major storms this last week or two. So I'm thankful for that. But yeah, it's been
yeah,
raining today. It's supposed to rain in a couple more days. Typical weather pattern for us right now. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, we'll let Robert get on with some stuff that we're going to talk about. But just quickly, as a Canadian, I want to say go Oilers.
Yes. As
And
a as an American, go Oilers. I'm so
well, yeah,
glad they beat
not
Dallas.
both. Well, I
Yes.
guess I guess unless you're Floridian, there's a good chance you're rooting for the Oilers.
Yeah.
If you're Floridian, you probably are not.
Yeah.
Right. So,
And there's a Predator, or used to be Predator. Ekholm is on the Oilers, so I'd love to see him get a cup because he's a
oh, that's
fantastic
right. Yeah.
defenseman.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. He deserves it too. And
yeah.
obviously, there's a few other players on there. Draisaitl, that is one name to
Yes.
mention that I think
Yes.
greatly deserves a cup. I
Yeah.
you know what I think Draisaitl should do is just break his contract and go sign with the Jets. Worry about the legalities of it later.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. All right, we're
Yes.
not talking about that today.
Yeah, because we'll
Go
get
on.
started on that and never stop. Well, just a couple
Right.
things real quick. So this was interesting to me, and I actually chuckled when I saw this because in typical Microsoft fashion, there's an article about the enormity of Microsoft's Windows Phone shutdown mistake is becoming increasingly clear in the AI era. Of course, if you remember way back then, um, the iPhone started, and Windows Phone was actually the very next major platform to come out. And they
Yeah,
had the Trio series of phones, and they were actually pretty good. I used up to this Trio 750, I think, and it was
oh, you
actually pretty
did use
good.
them? You
Oh
you
yeah,
did.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I at one point thought my next phone was definitely going to be a Windows phone, and then Google made an announcement. But we'll talk about that another time.
Right, yeah. So they
Actually,
were
we'll be
actually pretty
talking about it
good.
later today.
Yeah, especially being in the Microsoft ecosystem, they missed a big opportunity. But they're talking about
Yeah, yeah, they did.
just the fact of where AI is now and how they could have really embedded their co-pilot, and they just missed the mark. They've missed the mark on mobile, like when they stopped developing before Android became big. They blew it. I don't know
Well,
who's in charge of that, but they just
listen,
blew it.
Android already was becoming big, but there were two things that made the Windows Phone far less appealing. One, there was a limited number of apps you were ever going to get to use on it in its current state at that time, because it was literally a miniature version of Windows on your phone. And it was what would become Windows 8, which made it even worse. It did, however, have a lot of advantages for the future, and that it was the smoothest, buttery smooth operating system I've ever seen. And they had garbage, not all garbage, most of their hardware was very good, but there were a couple of garbage phones that they had, at least towards the tail end, anyways. And they ran it buttery smooth. And when I say buttery smooth, if you think your iPhone runs smoothly, no, there is still jank in an iPhone. Every single iPhone has had it, even the iPhone 15 Pro Max. But it's not nearly as bad as what Android used to be, or some smaller, lesser powerful Android phones might be today, even. But Windows Phone never had that problem on any of their devices. Problem was they didn't do their development beyond
Yeah.
the operating system itself,
Yeah.
and
Like I said, I
nobody
used
wanted
like
it.
4 or 5 versions of the Trio. and it was a great phone.
Yeah.
I loved it. But I just found that to be interesting because there's things like that that always coming back and haunting Microsoft. In all reality, if they
Yeah.
would have played their cards right, it would have been an Apple, Microsoft, Google trio of smartphone OSs out there.
A triopoly.
Yeah, it could have
Well,
been,
yeah,
but yeah,
it could have been, and the difference
yeah,
is that Microsoft, being Microsoft, it would have meant that much like Google, you would have been able to do virtually anything with it. As a matter
yeah,
of fact, even more so than Google, because there's no way you can't not get into the stuff, right?
right.
And just to put it into perspective, if anybody wonders, well, what kind of stuff do they make? If you're not aware of what Microsoft does, if you think the Surface sucks because you heard about that 10, 12 years ago, yeah, the Surface RT sucked. Yeah, the Surface 2 sucked. Yeah, the
Had an
Surface
RT.
Pro 3 was okay. But the Surface Pro 4 and onward and everything else they made, total professional stuff.
Yeah,
Literally worth the incredibly overpricing that they throw at you on it. But
yeah,
they work very well. They're very good machines. They're very reliable, and honestly, their phones would have continued to be, but they weren't going
yeah,
to compete with Android because Android started out exactly as they needed to, open source.
right.
It just so happens that Google was smart enough to say, this is AOSP, but we're going to also give you Android, and you can do something with it if you want.
Yeah,
Skin it if you so desire, right?
yeah,
And that was the biggest thing because they not only had an open source software, but they also had a sort of open source, fully operational operating system that anyone could skin and put on another device and use Google Apps as long as they registered it and did it the way Google said they wanted it done. That's it.
yeah,
That's why
yeah.
Microsoft wasn't going to compete with that. No
Yeah,
way.
but big missed opportunity. And I just chuckled when I
Yeah.
saw that. I was like, wow, that's funny because yeah, when you look at where phones are now and computers and how tightly integrated, just like you plug your phone in now, you can use your webcam, and Windows talks to Android, Android talks to. I mean, just a huge missed opportunity. So
Oh,
I
I
just
totally agree there.
I
Yeah.
just kind of chuckled. The other thing that
Yeah.
I found interesting, I don't use Chat GPT, but I thought this was kind of cool. And I know you do. So I'm probably going to ask you to chime in here and give your input on this. But
A
Chat
little bit.
GPT 4.0, not 0, is now
That's my thing.
capable is now
Four,
capable
not zero.
of being able to chat with you when you're using other applications, like it's running in the background. So
Yeah.
I guess it's somehow when you use the app goes to the background and it's still listening. So I'm not really sure. You
Right.
said it did that, but I want you to.
Well, let me let
What's
me
been
let me
your
kind of
experience with that
explain
over
that. I
there?
may be wrong about that because they didn't explain this very well in here, and it just
Yeah,
doesn't seem to be explained very well. But I mean, it's typical Microsoft. At least
yeah,
they say something though. Google just keeps their mouth shut. Uh, it's a, I'm on it today. You're gonna find out later. Anyways, no. Prior to this, I could talk. And then keep in mind, this is the voice thing we're talking about, right? Not just typing, right? So when
correct.
you go into the Chat GPT with the voice thing, the way it worked before is if I went off the app, not like I just swipe it, swipe off and to go somewhere else, not to swipe it and close it out of memory. There would be a little indicator. I'll actually hang on one second here. Up in the top, somewhere over here, that would let you know that it's actually still there and listening to you. However, what I did not do in testing at that time was see that if it would actually continue if you open another app that required audio or visual anything.
Hmm.
So I assume that this update actually means that it correctly works in the background and doesn't just sit in a waiting state because there is a difference.
Right.
Apps can
Yeah.
sit in at least on Android. I don't know if they do that on on Apple or not, but on Android apps, all apps have the ability, but that doesn't mean that they will. have the ability to sit in a waiting state. And if they're an active app, they will actually give you notification of that. But generally, another app that needs to use your video or microphone will either say another app is using it, or the other app will just bail out.
Right.
So you actually have to have it written in code. And I think they made it this possible to use multiple apps and still have your microphone or whatever active, somewhere around 11 or 12, right? I can't remember.
Yeah, but you still have, again, it's still, I think, a lot up to the developer, because even though
it's entirely up to the developer to activate.
You can swipe up and you can go to another app. You're not actually closing it. Some apps won't run in the background. So
yeah, right. Yeah. Well,
so interesting though. So
anyways, it is an interesting feature though.
Is it? Did you notice when you used it in your particular iteration of it? Did it use a lot of memory? Did it cause any like memory issues?
Sorry, yeah, forgive me, but something just popped up and blocked my computer screen for a second. Okay, sorry, your question again.
That's bad. When you used it on your phone in its iteration prior to this update, did it have any kind of high memory usage? Like it was causing the phone to like...
No, but I mean, come on. If you have a high, even a mid-range phone, that's not really going to be I mean, it's all it really is like any other assistant. I mean, people have been using assistants before, and the difference is this one, of course, is fully connected to the internet because it has to use the LLM, and this is a free version. It's not putting anything on your phone. It also doesn't remember squat. If you run out of tokens, and I did relatively quickly, I just have to close it and open it again. It doesn't remember anything I said, but as long as I remember where I was, I can continue to ask questions from there. So
speaking of which, I meant to tell you that after this last update, and they talked about all the added tokens, I'm now able to copy. You know how I told you I take my audio, turn it into a transcript, take that transcript, then convert it into like a blog post. I have, the Gemini format it into blog post format. Well, I can now paste 3 times the amount of data that I used to, or if it's still too much, I can take it, put it into a text file, take the text file, upload the text file, tell it to analyze the text file, and then it will give me the content, which is really cool. And it's actually pretty fast. It works great.
Well, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have as much usage in that area right now in what I'm doing, but at the same time, I do like that those abilities are there, and I would like to actually play a little bit more with this Chat GPT 4.0 voice thing a little bit more, but it's limited, and it always will be on an Android phone to some extent. So I'm waiting for Google to make Gemini a little bit more robust and have it more built-in system, I extensions aren't really going to cut the mustard. I want to be able to tell it, hey, you know what? I'm on my way home. I expect to be home around 6:00. Turn on the lights in this room, that room, and make sure my TV's on because I don't want to miss the beginning of my show. And you could literally say that, and because it is an LLM, it will know what you mean. The problem is it can't actually initiate any of those things at this point in time.
Just think
individually it could, but
20 years from now, we're going to say, hey, Gemini, I'm on my way home. Please tell robot to cook me dinner.
maybe sooner.
Maybe sooner.
But, as Will Smith.
What was the robot in the Jetsons?
As Will Smith said.
Was it Rosie?
The Jetsons. Oh, the Jetsons. Robot. That was Rosie. Yeah, that was Rosie.
Rosie, yeah. Tell Rosie to cook me some dinner. Then
Rosie was a very large robot. I don't think I'd want her in my kitchen. Yeah, taking up way too much room and weighs about 700 pounds. It's just no. No. That's got to be better ones than that. I'd like to have one of the ones from the iRobot movie with Will Smith.
Yeah. Definitely a different form factor, but I'd still name her Rosie because it's
I'm
classic.
kidding. I wouldn't want one of those ones. That's for obvious reasons.
Well, if it doesn't turn on you and want to kill you, it's fine.
Listen. According to Will Smith, they will turn on you, and actually,
Yeah,
according to every
yeah,
movie ever made, they will turn on you.
yeah.
And we've already
I
passed the
guess they all
date.
become sentient, huh? And
According to
turn into
Terminator, we've already gone past the date, so we don't know what's happening right now.
yeah. See,
Get
Skynet.
any- yeah, let's get off of the Skynet stuff and let's move on. You know what? Let's bring up the Samsung thing. Woohoo! Yeah, there's actually people on the internet making videos about how they're upset that Samsung is shafting its customers because I mean, like, you buy this piece of equipment and now you're just going to be forgotten about. It's like, when's the last time Samsung actually made and sold a watch with Tizen on it? I have to ask you that question.
I don't remember. I thought they switched back when they did the first like original
Oh
Galaxy
no.
watch, wasn't it?
Uh, I think the the original Galaxy, because weren't they called Galaxies before the? No, they wouldn't have been. That makes no sense. You know
I
what?
don't remember.
I can't believe I'm going to do this, but
Let's ask Gemini.
when did Samsung switch from Tizen to Wear OS? I can't turn the volume up. It won't let me. It says Samsung switched from its Tizen operating system to Wear OS with the release of the Galaxy Watch 4 and
Hmm.
Galaxy Watch Active 4 in August of 2021. So we are talking about 3 years ago. So, I mean, this is a watch that wouldn't have been supported past this year, anyways. That's an
Right.
absolute fact. They don't support watches beyond 3 years. Who does except Apple?
Yeah.
And even then, they're only maybe 4 years, anyways, right? For Apple watches, because they changed the
Yeah.
OS on it.
I don't
Um,
know. I know that they get to a point where it's like, this app watch is too old. You can't update it anymore, kind of thing. I don't know how long it is because since my wife doesn't use Apple anymore, I'm not even part of that ecosystem. Thank God. But so what are they going to do about their TVs though? I didn't read the whole article. Are they switching their TVs or are they still maintaining Tizen for their television?
I thought they already did.
No.
I thought they were using a different version of WebOS or something like that, but they're not. I don't
No,
know. I didn't.
both of these Samsungs I have here, and they're
Just
brand
so
new,
that
are
means mine
Tizen.
is Tizen. So that's why I hate it so much. I'm sorry. I've never been a Tizen fan for any reason on a watch. That's honestly the only reason why I refused to buy a Samsung watch years ago. I always looked at them and said these ones look better. They're built better. They probably are better, but I can't use Tizen. I can't do it. And even with the Samsung TV, I don't technically use it. I'm using my Nvidia Shield. So I'm not
Right.
actually using it, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
don't use it either.
don't
I
get
mean,
me
it's
wrong.
it's
I
there,
do like that they
but
have all that free TV, but they could throw that into Google TV just as easily.
oh yeah,
And
for
quite
sure.
frankly, please, for the love of God, Samsung, make Google TV TVs.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and you don't even have to worry about overskinning it. And it, honestly, it would cost you less money. So like people go, well, I can get a Google TV from anywhere else. Samsung does make better TVs.
Yeah.
I
I'd
mean,
be
honestly,
super happy
their
with
mid-range TVs are as good as a lot of other companies' lower high-end TVs. And like I have one of Samsung's high mid-range TVs, which are actually very inexpensive, but they look as good in the picture as most lower high-end TVs. And
yeah.
keep in mind, I'm not trying to compare this to LG OLEDs, or something like that, right? I'm just
Right.
talking about the fact that they give you more for less money, technically. And if you want to spend a little bit more, you can get a much better TV. And they're still probably the least expensive of the better TVs if you go to the higher end. Because even in Canada, I could be by the top end Samsung right now. I'll use 55 inches as an example because bedroom TV in this case. Um, their top end one is I think around $1,700 or something like that,
Yeah.
maybe 18, something like that. I mean, but I'd say what is it? What is it in America about? 1400.
Well, I mean, they have
I
some
may be,
$1,400
I may
TVs,
be off
but
because they also put out some new ones recently too.
yeah, because the
Everybody's
OLEDs, I
on
mean,
the.
you can get into like some of the OLEDs, like
Well, I'm not
the
talking
one
about their
I.
OLEDs. I'm talking about their QLEDs, the
Oh, okay,
QLED ones.
yeah, I don't know what the top end is right now for the
Well, I
QLED.
thought you owned the top end. You bought it last year, didn't you, or the year before,
Well,
whatever it
it's
was?
2020, and I
Oh, a few
spent
years
on
ago.
that. Yeah, on that TV. I mean, ironically, that TV was $2,000 in
Yeah, but see,
2020,
what I'm saying
and
is
now
that
I
the
bought
line
this
has come down.
OLED for less than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but that yeah, but what I'm saying is that those though that line has come down. The actual
Yeah,
cost of the TVs, and it's weird because everything else is going up, but TV technology always comes down in price over time. But the difference here is that there's new technology coming out where the newer ones are the same price as the 2-year-old ones
hmm
used to be, instead of being more expensive, which basically means the price of all TVs is still coming down. So if you buy a TV that's 2 years old, it's now relevant. Unlike 10 years ago, if you bought a 2-year-old TV, it was yesterday's news already. It's suddenly you go, well, you got a TV that only does 1080i? What the heck is that? You know, but it's not the case anymore. They all basically do the same thing. It's just you might have more dimming zone on the newer ones or something like that. They work a little bit better, but it's more for most people, with the exception of gamers. You're probably not going to notice a difference between 2 years ago and this year's. Most likely, you won't notice. And as for picture quality,
yeah,
you won't see it. You won't. Really. So I that's why I say, it's like price is coming down. It makes it a lot better. More people can buy the better TVs now. And the
yeah.
only thing, as I say, is it makes me think of, don't you miss the days when you could walk into Best Buy and see that beautiful wall of CRTs? No?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had one that weighed like 900 pounds.
But that wall of CRTs, it was always on one side and then it cornered. Remember?
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
Best Buy, it was the same like that. And then because it was, and I remember when it started to change. I went in one time, and the TVs that were in the middle racks next to it didn't have smaller TVs like they used to. The wall was still CRTs. I was going to say CRTC, Canadian Radio and Television. Yeah, no. Anyways, they had CRTs, but they had LCDs, or were they even LCDs? No, they would have been. And there would have been
plasmas.
some other, yeah, a couple of plasmas, yeah, and maybe some overly priced, very small LCDs as well, on a couple of short aisles that were next to the big wall. And those ones, I think, was it 6 months after that, half the TV wall was gone, and a few months after that, the entire wall was all plasmas and LCDs.
Man, you want
Like,
to talk
what
about a
the hell
flop?
happened?
Plasma was a huge flop, man, and those things
It
were
was never going to make it. It
expensive.
was
Oh, they
never
were
going to make it.
expensive.
Now, I don't blame any of the manufacturers for saying these giant projection TVs. Yeah, because those were a thing for about 10, 12 years, maybe
Yeah, they
more,
were.
right?
Yep.
There were only rich people could buy them, or if you saved a lot of money, or you bought it used from somebody who just didn't want this monstrosity in their house anymore. And the weirdest thing is the biggest one you could get would be equivalent to about a 55 or 60-inch TV now. And
Yeah.
yet people went, it's massive. And it was, but
Yeah.
not the screen. And they were terrible. You couldn't watch them in the daytime, even in cloudy weather. You had to black out your living room to
Yeah.
watch them. And if you moved 2 inches to the right or left.
Terrible.
But
Terrible.
plasmas, honestly, they weren't as good a picture as some of these guys on YouTube are claiming. Oh, they had a great picture. They weren't that good. But the
No.
one thing it was is much like OLEDs, you saw zero latency. So
Yeah,
if you
we
hooked a
used to have
gaming
an old
machine up to one
plasma,
even
and it
today,
was, yeah.
yeah, if you hooked up a gaming machine to one today, you would have zero latency. Zero. But yeah,
Yeah.
they also got hot. You couldn't use them for more than 2 or 3 years max before you'd have to pay half the price of the TV for a new bulb.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Specialized tubes or whatever, they were horrible.
Yeah. Anyways.
And ridiculously expensive. So
Yeah.
moving on.
So it makes me wonder if eventually they're gonna sunset their Tizen for their TVs, but I guess we'll see.
I really do hope they do. And if they don't, I don't know, rewrite it and make it like fully compatible with something else. Do
Yeah.
something with it because it just
It's
doesn't
I
make
mean,
any
it's
sense
not
to
bad
me.
on these new TVs, but it's definitely lacking in some areas. But yeah,
Yeah, the thing is, it's not all that. It's not slow and cumbersome like it used to be. Because like I said, even these mid-range TVs are fast enough in their processor to handle it. Because
right.
they have to be able to do all this 4K stuff and expect you to play games on them and stuff. So they have to work well enough for that.
Yeah.
But it's not a pretty system. You're stuck with going to the Samsung store to get apps that may or may not work. And I say that because I've actually put an app on that I wanted to use for the first time in months. And I'm like, it doesn't work. So I had to
Yeah.
give up. And
Yeah.
Glenn upstairs has issues using Apple Music to so he doesn't have to hook his phone up wirelessly
Mm,
because he wants to leave the room, or he wants to be able to take phone calls without cutting the music out. So I said, well, just use the TV, and
yeah.
and and,
My
and he puts
son-in-law
it on,
has
but it
a
cuts out all the time. Cuts out
yeah.
like
My
literally the
son-in-law
app just
has a
stops working.
Samsung. He uses the apps on the phone on the TV, and what I notice, like when we're over their house, is there's a lot of buffering. So it's like it can't handle the data that's coming in. And of course, his TV's a little older, but still, it's not that old,
Yeah,
and it's just not as yeah. It's not as good, but
yeah.
you know,
Well,
we'll see.
anywho, where were we at? Uh,
So I think our next thing we were going to talk about is since we're on AI, is that dude
oh
from
yeah, here
Winnipeg.
we go. Oh, were we? Oh, yeah. Okay, sorry. I had the wrong thing open. That's embarrassing. See, this is what happens when you're not live. That's right. We're recording this. Okay, but we do it live to recording, right? There's no editing here. There's no editing here. Sorry. All right. Got to act like an idiot once in a while. Oh, speaking of which, there's a like button down there and a subscribe button. Oops, sorry, right next to it. Please use it. Like and subscribe. Yes, he's pointing exactly right. You know what we're talking about. You get to that. Okay, all right. I'm skipping over this one because we didn't talk about that. All right.
It could be my order is wrong. So if it's
No,
me,
no,
I
it doesn't
apologize.
matter. We
But
may have
yeah,
already brought
yeah.
the other one up, and I just don't know what I'm talking about. All right, go on, go on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I sent it to you. You. This is a guy that is a news article about a man in Winnipeg, and the only thing that drew my attention because it was a Canadian guy, and that he fell for a scam and lost hundreds of dollars for something he thought was Facebook customer support hotline.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I see this. Yeah, yeah. I remember reading it. I totally forgot it because we had a lot of things we were going to talk about. But yeah, no, that is that's
Like,
scary because I mean, if you're going to use AI, and you know what, it kind of brings along one thing we were talking about a few podcasts ago, um, where I was mentioning that when I use Gemini specifically, I do this for any AI I use, but specifically with Gemini, I notice that sometimes I'll ask it a question and I'm not quite satisfied with the answer, or
mhm.
maybe I just want because here's the thing. I tell those people because people always say Wikipedia, you don't want to go to Wikipedia for your information. Why not? It's the best place to start. Why? Because if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see where everything was cited, and then you can double check that and then you can Google the information again and find out where you can cite the information. That's how you do proper research to start if you're going to use that. Otherwise, go to the library and make phone calls the old fashioned way. But if you're going to do it at home or on your phone on the bus or wherever you are, that's what you
Yeah.
do. So the same thing should apply when you use AI. AI is artificial intelligence. And the fact that it's artificial in its very definition means it can't possibly be perfect. And
Well,
even one day,
he
sorry, go ahead.
asked Messenger if the number was legitimate. Facebook Messenger, their
Oh yeah, yeah,
AI,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Meta.
it said,
Mm.
oh yeah, this is a number for, Meta AI, or Meta,
Yeah.
support.
Yeah. Let's be clear about one thing though. Regardless of which AR you're using, you should fact check whatever you get
Always.
if it's important. So in this guy's particular case, well, what was it again? He lost it for what reason here? Sorry, I'm getting away from the mic.
So and here's you can answer this question. He was a former Manitoba NDP member of the legislature. What is an NDP member? What does that mean?
Oh, New Democratic Party. It's a political
Okay.
party. In
Okay.
this particular case, it's the Manitoba New Democratic Party.
So he was a politician, bought a phone, was transferring his data, ran into a problem with his Facebook app, searched for a Facebook number, asked Facebook Messenger if it was legitimate. Messenger said yes. He called it and lost several $100s because it was a scam. So
Yeah.
that's what, and it just goes to show you again, it's a
Yeah.
tool, people. It is
It,
a
it is
tool. It is not a
exactly.
replacement for life and logic. Okay. It is a tool
Yeah.
for you to simplify, maybe make things a little easier, maybe expedite something,
Yeah.
but always take it with
Absolutely.
a
And you know
grain of
what?
salt.
Here's a great analogy then, since you're going to say it. It's a tool. And you're right. So here's the thing. You've got your tool. Let's say you need to use a wrench on something. Your first instinct is, I got to get this off of here as fast as possible so I can move on with what I got to do. So you take that wrench and you just start going like this, right? Unfortunately, it doesn't quite get the job done properly because you're not using it right. If you take your time and you do it properly, you'll actually get done faster and properly. If you're using AI, fact check your stuff if you really need to. If it's important, especially anything to do with business, banking, money, ID, your address,
Yeah.
even your email address, for crying out loud. Then, like I said, when I use Gemini, I might ask it a question and it answers the question. Now, if it's very obvious, like, oh, what time's the sunset today? And it says, oh, at 8:23 or something, then, well, okay, good enough. I don't need to ask it to fact check that because maybe it's a
Right.
minute off. Who cares?
Right.
Right. But if I ask it exactly what the interest rates are because I'm thinking about getting a new mortgage and I want to know the phone number for this or that bank to find out what they can do for me, it will give me that information. But if I don't fact check that and find other information, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to be stupid and phone the first one. And if I'm using Meta instead of Gemini, apparently it's going to use the first one it found, which is going to happen to be someplace in, well, another country.
Yeah.
You know,
You just have to use logic and,
precisely.
just be careful, people. Just,
Yeah, yeah. Fact check your
again,
stuff. And by the way, you can tell your AI to fact check itself. And generally speaking, it will usually come back with, "Oh, I'm sorry for the confusion. You were right." And
yeah,
and it
because
will give you other
it doesn't
information.
have feelings. It doesn't feel like you're slighting it. It's just going to be like, okay, it's a robot basically on the
Yeah,
back
has
end
has that
somewhere.
happened to you? By the way, have you done that before yet? Fact checked your own question? If it,
I don't usually ask it the questions like you do, so I've not really used it in that manner. Again, my main use is like I was saying, I take already my own content kind of stuff and say, hey, help me create a, format this into this. So it doesn't have to
okay,
think
okay,
about like creating something or going and checking something. It's just taking this and rearranging it to make it look like this. I
right,
still have
okay,
to go
all
through
right,
though, because sometimes
yeah.
it does weird things with the paragraphs or the spelling or
Now,
whatnot. So I still have to
if
check
I
it, but
might, here's where you could actually, if you when you check it, instead of fixing it, actually tell it, I have found some errors. Please go over it again and make sure that you correct any errors because this is not how I asked it to be formatted.
yeah, I'll try
And
that.
generally speaking,
We'll see what
those
happens.
kinds of things will work, and that's why I love it. All right, so we, yeah. You know, the funny thing is we usually get on about one thing for so long, but there's so many things that we wanted to actually get to. So we figure we'll go through some, but obviously at some point we're going to end up babbling about the one subject. I will say this, if you're watching this and you want to know more about it, for the love of Pete, or even Pete's Dragon, if that's the way you want to go, leave a comment and tell us, like we want to hear some stuff and everything, like we want
And
you
we'll
to
have
talk
Jim
about
and I
this.
get back to you.
We got interest.
No, just kidding.
Yeah, Meta. We'll have Meta get back. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? And here's the other thing we should actually, I'm going to say this right on the middle of the broadcast. If there's anybody watching and they actually have something that they want to talk about, sports, something about Canada, something about the United States, something about a specific state, not something that gets people upset, but something you just want to talk about, but it's specifically sports or technology stuff, then leave a comment. Maybe we can figure out how to talk about it. Maybe we can even get a guest on our show if you want to have your 2 minutes of 15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's possible. So anyways, let's get on to what we want to talk about. Beyond that, which one were we going to here? Oh, wait a minute. Since I am so upset about this is what is this one? Oh, well, no, that's not what I was. I read the wrong one. I apologize. I'm not sure. I think we have to skip a couple of these ones that I've got on my list because we have.
Well, you were talking about, and I didn't read the article you sent me about Google Assistant continues to crumble in the Gemini era. I don't know.
In the Gemini area. Yeah, I'm not. What? I believe that to be true, but I'm not so sure that Gemini is actually 100% at fault because it's not really helping it along right now. There are some more updates that we expect Gemini to have and some more extensions, but I think beyond extensions, they really need to actually move in there and say, we need to put some of these functionalities directly into Gemini.
Yeah.
As a base for them to work. Sorry, I'm looking over because a cat decided to come in. Hey, kitty cat, how's it going? She's coming right over here. Yeah, you know what? That's what YouTube does. Hang on a second. You want to get good views? Here, kitty cat, come and say hi. Hello. Got to come closer so I can snag you up without you freaking out. Oh, no, she's not close enough. No, there you go. Yes, kitty cat. Yes. Kitty cat. Oh, oh, that was perfect. I thought she was going to meow. No,
not happy. Put me down.
She looked right at the microphone.
Yeah, put me down immediately.
I can't believe the timing that worked out. Okay, that's where were we?
Well, here's if you don't want to talk about the Google Assistant thing, I didn't read the article, so I don't really have.
There's not much to it. It's just basically we don't it need to improve on it. So let's go on with it.
But here's something that I am curious about because again, I already had the functionality, but you didn't. But you found out about the trackers for the
yes.
Find My Device. How buying a tracker would kick off the
right
installation or activation of that service, even though it might not be showing available to you, which I found interesting because it's like, does that mean it's there? They just didn't want to give it to you until you went and bought something? I mean, I guess that's, yeah.
Well, the weirdest thing is well, I mean, almost everybody should have it by now because I've now got it activated on both of my phones. The only thing is that it doesn't do jack squat with the phones, which is weird. I mean, it still says it might be a little bit more pinpointy to a point, right? I think it can be. Certainly if you lose it and you're not in your own house testing it. But the thing about the trackers is that you can actually legit find the tracker within a few feet or less. Like I've seen videos of people actually getting it. I mean, because it should work virtually the same way as the Apple ones, whatever they're called. I forgot.
My tracker's around here somewhere. At least I thought it was.
What kind of tracker?
Bag. My little Samsung.
Oh yeah, that by the way also needs to be a new one to work with the new system. Uh,
Yeah.
because apparently it's a hardware thing. It's not a software thing, so they can't just
Yeah.
update. Which is fine. I get that because they never had a network before, so they obviously have to use different hardware.
Yeah. I'm sure
Um,
transmitters are different, stuff like that.
oh yeah, they have to be. Yeah, yeah, because they work. They're definitely going to work differently. The interesting thing though is that Samsung will obviously probably, well, maybe not right away, but they might make some that work with the Android system as well as their own, which would be interesting if they did, because it would give you, two opportunities. Well, it's not finding it with this one. I'll switch networks. I don't know if they
Yeah.
ever will, but maybe if they make a bigger, more expensive one that you can put on your luggage, for instance, or on a tablet or laptop, but not necessarily your wallet or your phone. But
Right.
when they're available in stores, I plan to get one. I don't know exactly. I'm not going to use it for my phone because I can track my phone anyways.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, if I'm ever traveling anywhere, I want to make sure if somebody takes something, so I'll put it in laptop bag, maybe glue one to my laptop itself, stuff like that, right?
Right.
And that'll just make it a lot easier, because you can always use all this other Find My stuff with a lot of things. Like if I had an Android tablet, I could still use Find My, but if I actually put the tracker on it, I would find it easier, unless it was a newer tablet that was on the network, obviously.
Right.
But yeah, so apparently, according to wait a minute, I can't remember who wrote the article because he cites Ben Shun, who was the first one that from 9 to 5 Google, that is, that detailed on the process of when you get a new tracker, how to add it and all that. So he does mention who is it again? Let me get this name right here. I got my glasses on. I still can't see. Damian Wild. He wrote this actually May 29th, or at least published it May 29th. I don't know when he wrote it. And he does say that his colleague Ben Shun has recently detailed the process of adding a supported tracker to the account. The guide is great if you have the Find My Device network activator on your account, so on and so on. But he says even so, he decided that maybe I'll try and set up the Chipotle that he brought. I still want to say Chipotle, but it is what it is. Newest trackers before heading for the long weekend without the device network activated. He expected to be left high and dry. I'm skipping over here because I don't want to just pair them, you know. But he says the initial setup phase allowed me to connect to the enhanced network and integrate the first wave trackers almost instantly. In other words, it was set up already. So when he put it into the Find My Device in the phone, it instantaneously tripped the network to say, okay, we're going to have to put this on now then. And it makes sense. And honestly, it would be stupid of Google not to have done it that way. Uh, I think it doesn't hurt them in any way, shape, or form. They probably didn't tell anybody because then there would
Right.
have been an excess wave of people trying to order them. And I mean, these companies ran out almost instantly from the pre-orders because everybody wants to get one. People have been wanting good trackers that could compete with what Apple does for years.
Yeah.
And me, myself included. I've never bought a tracker because every time I ever even thought about it, I was either told by somebody else, don't do it, or get a Samsung and then get theirs. And I'm like, well, I'm not doing either one of those then. So, and
Right.
it's not because I don't like Samsung, but that's another story. I'm not going to tell you that I had a nice experience checking out a Samsung device. But, I'm not going to say it.
You're not going to say it.
I love my pixels, and we'll leave it at that. To some extent. All right, Find My Device. You know what? Let's actually, because how much time? We don't have a lot of time. So, since we like to ramble, let's ramble on about something we really like. Let's see how many Americans and Canadians we can get here. Should higher taxed NHL teams like the Maple Leafs get an NHL salary cap exception? Now, before anyone gets up in arms and says, what are you, crazy? everybody has to pay their share. You're right. Unfortunately, some teams aren't. And teams like Florida, as well as Florida, and I hate to say it, even though this might be not a great example right now, but the Nashville Predators. They're also on the list of teams that I'm not sure how it works in the States. So maybe you might want to give this a peruse and talk about what this actually means and why. Because I'm not as familiar with tax systems in the States, because they are talking mainly about U.S. states.
How is the Predators higher tax though? Tennessee as a state doesn't even have like state income tax. So like,
no, that's the point. Sorry, that's the point. They don't. Therefore, here's the way this is working out.
oh,
When
so
they
they're
have this
saying
salary cap,
okay,
the salary cap actually includes everything, right? So not everything. See, let me rephrase that. The salary cap is the, oh God, I have to read it now. I literally forgot how it worded it. Basically, the bottom line is Toronto gets gypped because as much as they do spend, they still have to pay the taxes, but they don't have that money to spend, right? So they include the taxes in it. So if you're not paying taxes, that means you have more money to put in your salary cap. In other
okay.
words, you
I
can
was
spend
reading
more
that
money on
backwards.
everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I did too, about 3 times before I went over it again, and I was like, "Oh, now I get it." So basically, the bottom line and for Nashville, it hasn't exactly worked out in their favor. But Florida
Thanks.
also is a much larger market. Period. And I say that as a state because they have a lot of people and 2 major hockey teams that have dominated going to the Stanley Cup over the last 5 or 6 seasons now.
Yeah, it's 5 or 6. I don't remember
Yeah,
the first time.
exactly.
The Lightning was the first one I think to go, and then the Panthers did a couple times, and of course
And then the
Lightning won
Lightning did
back
a
to
couple of
back, and
times, and then the
yeah.
Panthers again now. So basically, the last time a non-Florida team went to the Stanley Cup from the Eastern Conference was when Fred Flintstone was playing for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, that's a good
And
question. I
his
have to look
line
that up.
mate
That's interesting.
was Og, you know, played with a
Yeah.
club, and he took the club home to make sure his wife had dinner ready.
So they're saying that
Caveman
these
jokes, all right. That
higher
wasn't
tax
good.
teams like Toronto should get an
Yeah.
exception to be able to be equal to a team like Nashville that has no state tax to pay and their taxes are lower,
Yeah. They're
which
basically
theoretically
saying,
gives them more money. And you know what I have
yeah.
to say to that is no, because
No, wait. What they're saying is, hang on, the exception, that's the wrong word to use in reality. What they're actually saying is that it should be based on the net of what is paid out, not the gross, right? So because if it's the net, then everyone has the same thing. So that means Nashville has exactly 185. Well, obviously more than that. Like one guy probably makes that much money nowadays. But a hypothetical situation, because I don't even know how much. Let's say they got 400 million to spend, right? They Nashville has $400 million exactly that they can spend on those contracts. Toronto does not, because their contracts state that they have to get this amount of money after taxes. So
right.
that's why. So their salary cap goes above it before the taxes are paid, and this includes the money that the team has to pay for taxes to cover. So it's even double that amount. So we're not talking about a few $100 difference, or a few thousand, or a few million even. We're talking if you have a $400 million cap, and obviously everybody would. Then Nashville gets to spend 400 million, where Toronto would only get to spend about 320 million. That's $80 million difference just on that. And that's not right. But unfortunately, that's the way they wrote it up. But they wrote it up for a different era. That's the problem, right? So No, you
Interesting.
were saying you don't think. So do you still not think?
Well, I guess what I'm curious to know too is how does like well, how does like NFL do it? I know obviously there's no NFL in Canada, right?
No, but
But
they still have to
there is
play
NFL
in
in other
taxable
states that
states and
have state
untaxable
tax,
states.
like
Yes,
California. California is a very high tax state. I wonder
right.
how they do their contract
Like
system.
Ontario. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I have no idea. That might be something to discuss in the future. Although I don't know as much about NFL, but I will say this. I'd like to find out more about NFL, and you should find out more about CFL. Stay tuned in the summer for that one. Anyways,
Yeah, that's
um,
interesting. That's an interesting concept. Yeah. I see what they're saying. I mean,
well,
I
let
don't
me
know.
put
I'd
it
have
this
to.
way: all teams would basically have this be allowed to spend the same amount of money, and they'd have the same advantages and disadvantages exactly across the board. Meaning, you couldn't have Florida teams stacking all of their stuff. And now the interesting thing is, you see, New York is now doing the same thing, even though they do have state tax, but they're just like going, well, we have to try at least. But it can only get them so far, right? They didn't make
Yeah.
it, even though they probably were. But you know what? A lot of people predicted Florida, but that's another story altogether.
See, but
Um,
I don't think I don't. I mean, I could be wrong because obviously I'm not a general manager of a hockey team, but I don't see how it's that big of a
well,
impact because the National Predators are saying has more money to spend, but
hang
you
on.
know,
There's a list in the article.
oh, I see
To,
the
to,
list.
yeah. So, I mean, um, Florida, well, yeah, Florida Panthers 2024, 2023, both the Florida Panthers, as we mentioned, and the Golden Knights. You'd think, by the way, that a state that makes all its money on gambling would actually tax people. Anyway, anyways,
So
having said that,
2019, 2020, and current has featured a Florida team. 2019 was St. Louis and Boston.
well, yeah. So 2023,
So it hasn't been
2022,
quite
but
as long as
well,
we thought, but yeah, it's still a lot of years. Yeah.
yeah, but it's like that's when one, two, three, four, five straight years. Yeah, which is what I said. I said 5 or 6. I said turned to be 5. So,
Yeah.
anyways, 2022 Colorado Avalanche did defeat Tampa Bay Lightning, but again, Tampa went to the Stanley Cup, meaning they had a chance and a better chance than most, right? Obviously, they went in 2021, defeating Montreal, who does pay a very high tax, by the way. Tampa Bay Lightning defeated Dallas Stars. Neither one of them has state tax. 2019 was the first time, as you mentioned, with the Blues and Boston Bruins, and we all know how much I love 2019 and how much we all love that the Blues came from behind, from not even in a playoff position to winning the Stanley Cup. But that didn't hurt at all. Anyways, 2019, both teams didn't. Yeah, like I mean, they're both from taxable states, right? However, the previous 2 years, again, Washington Capitals did defeat Vegas Golden Knights, but again, Vegas made it, and we know that they have money to spend for more reasons than just the tax situation. Um, 2017 Pittsburgh Penguins. Oh, I don't even want to tell you this because it might make you cry. Defeating the Nashville Predators. Again, the
Oh, I
Nashville
remember
Predators,
that.
no
Yes.
state
Mhm.
tax, right?
We got ripped off, but that's
Now,
okay.
here's the interesting thing. As far as I know, Alberta doesn't have a state tax either, but I think they do tax income tax in the States. They just don't charge sales tax in Alberta.
Hmm.
Um, so that's probably why they don't mention Alberta. Um, that said, that's why. So it does show that, I think it goes back further than that too, because if you remember, a Canadian team hasn't had a shot at winning realistically until maybe this year, and even then, it's going to be tough for Edmonton to do it against Florida.
It's going to be a tough series. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah,
But
it's going to be it's going to be
more
tough.
importantly, I think than this is they need to deal with this whole over the cap in the playoff BS
I
that
think they need to deal
teams
with it
are
together.
manipulating.
I think they
Well,
need to
maybe
be dealt
so, but
together because this is all going to keep in mind. This is all going to be part of what's going to have to go into the next collective bargaining agreement. It's going to have to be dealt with together. And are we not up for one soon, or did they just do it recently? I don't remember a new CBA.
wasn't it right around COVID? Maybe a little like
I
2020,
think it
twenty
might.
twenty one.
When is the next CBA due in the NHL? Hey, sorry, dead air. It takes a couple of seconds. It says it's not due yet. That's not what I asked it. I asked it.
Yeah, I thought
It
I
does
saw
say.
something
It does say,
here that
however, they have already extended the CBA for the 25-26 NHL season, but the extension covers only that season. It is not extended to future seasons. So it's already going into not going into extensions. It will be going into extension, which means
yeah,
if they
after
don't
that.
go to the table, we could be in trouble. So hopefully they decided to take the extension as a reason to go to the table during the extent or prior to the extension. That way they have more time to talk about it. And I think they knew they had a lot of things to talk about. So I'm hoping that what we see is a new agreement and that the 26-27 season will actually see all the change. Like maybe they can make those changes sooner, but at least by then make the changes we've talked about.
Yeah.
Changes with playoffs, changes with everything else.
Well, yeah, but I don't think that this. I mean, I could be wrong. I guess again, I don't know the actual hard numbers, but the whole, you know, LTIR and that whole
Yeah.
business created both teams a well. Let's see. I think Tampa Bay had an 18 million over cap, and the Golden Knights were 15. That's a
Yeah.
lot of
And
money.
and
That's a lot of
here's the
money you're
thing.
paying for
It's
players that you
it's
shouldn't be
more
able
so
to.
than you said because which teams did you just mention again?
Yeah, teams with no tax is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So not only were they over, but they were over by way more than what those numbers are suggesting because of the no tax situation. That means that was millions of dollars even more than that. So they basically could have fielded a whole second team that might have maybe made the playoffs. It's
Yeah.
not fair. And I'm hoping that you now understand what I mean when I say it should change.
No, I understand what they're saying. I just don't
You still don't
know.
agree?
No, I'm not saying
All
that.
right, all
I'm
right.
just
We're
saying that
gonna
I
have an
think
argument here.
I would have to
We don't have
investigate
time for an
like
argument. We've only got a couple of minutes.
how other professional teams, or I should say,
Well, you have to
leagues
investigate.
work.
There's yeah.
You know,
You
me
have
personally,
to.
because I don't know. I don't have any idea how that works in other
I'll tell
leagues.
you what. I'll
So
tell you what. You know what? Let's make this interesting. Maybe we could actually consider doing a shortened podcast show sometime either over the weekend or early next week and actually devote 25 minutes or so specifically to just talking about what other leagues do in this situation. What is the best option for the NHL based on that?
yeah,
What do you
we
think?
can do some
I think
investigating.
that's
Sure.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, why not? But I mean, actually, do a little podcast on it, shortened one, not an hour long, just a quick one that we can actually just get it out there and say, this is what we figured out. This is what we think you should do, and then get people to actually make some comments. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment in there. What do you think the solution is? And do you think that taxable states and provinces uh, should get a fair chance, or do you think it should just stay the way it is and it's fair enough? And
Yep.
you know what? If you say it's fair, please let us know if you're in Florida. With that, I think we have to say goodbye.
Yes. And on that note, I am Robert from Nashville, Tennessee.
And I'm Lionel from Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
We'll catch you next episode.
Ciao.